Welcome back to the PFF NFL show, a rookie review episode. Myself and Jon Ledyard here with you guys for a very fun topic. Midway through the NFL season, well, almost midway through the NFL season, we are going to rank the rookie classes. How well these rookie classes are playing so far halfway into their rookie seasons with their teams. And Jon, there's a lot of things that could go into this, right? It could be a rookie class where one guy at the top is really carrying the group. How much do you weigh that in the rankings versus maybe you got 2, 3, 4 players who are playing decent. They're getting a lot of playing time, but they're not playing as well as some of these other players are. I am terrified or excited, depending on how you want to look at it for content's sake, that our list could look drastically different here on this exercise. But how you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm doing great. It'll be obviously great for the content if our lists are drastically different so that people can see how much better my list is than yours. I think that's kind of like the top priority here. So I'm excited to get started. I don't think there's any way they could be that different. Like drastically different would be crazy. We just don't have enough. Like there are some clear cut. To me, there was clear cut 5 at the top. Maybe you could see the team I have number 6 in that top 5. And then I thought there was like 5, 6 after that. So I don't know. Maybe you'll see it differently. I'm excited to get into it.
You make me nervous when you say the words clear cut. Then it makes me feel like I'm second guessing myself out here. But no, we got the list. We're sticking to it. The way that we're going to do it is we're going to leave the suspense because really, I was doing the top 10 offensive defensive line episodes with Ollie Conley for the In the Trenches show. And to be honest with you, we kind of knew who the top-ish defensive lines were. So even like saving the quote-unquote suspense for the very end, it wasn't super suspenseful because we kind of knew who was going to be at the top, at least in picks 1 and 2. This one, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. Let's get it kicked off. Let's get it kicked off, though. Who do you got at number 10?
Okay, I have number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, all right.
Are they in your top 10?
They're not. They were okay. They were the next team in for me though. They were number 11 for me.
That's understandable. We have not seen enough of Cooper DeJean yet to like feel great about this. Right. And the rest of the class, the jury's pretty out on, obviously. But to me, the idea of the Eagles class was we're getting 2 defensive backs that can play, can start, can hold the line for us, and we can redo this room. That hasn't come without like any bumps in the roads, but I do think that both of these guys are playing at a pretty high level this season. I've already talked to you about this when we did the defensive rookies, but I think Mitchell's played very well this season. Mm-hmm. It's not been perfect, but rookie cornerbacks coming to the NFL basically never are, and I think he's played at a really high level for them. He just gives them a lot of what they're looking for, and he's very scheme versatile too. He'll tackle. His coverage skills are really, really good. He closes on the ball underneath. So to me, he's like kind of an ideal player to represent like the top of your class at this position especially. And then DeJean is stepping in, and we'll see, kind of how things go here in the nickel. But so far it's been pretty good in terms of at least taking care of his assignments. I watched the tape and I'm like, he's not really been exposed per se, but I'm wondering how he moves in that position, if there's gonna eventually come a time where he gets attacked more. But so far in terms of executing his assignments, knowing what to do, coming up and run support, making stops, like he has done a pretty good job so far. So there's not a lot to complain about. I think it's just you are projecting out a little bit if you see him in that spot, and the rest of the class hasn't done much. So this is one that's pretty carried by the top of the class.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is like I really like what the Eagles class is going to be moving forward, especially with DeJean taking that slot spot. And there are a couple of teams here that it's really being carried by the guys at the very top, but I still have them in my top 10 because they've played. Like, you're at least getting like 2 guys that have played for the Eagles. It's just not a lot. I think Quinyon Mitchell has played well. Cooper DeJean graded out really well for his first start there. So I had them just outside of the top 10. My number 10 team is the San Francisco 49ers. Are they in your top 10?
They are not in my top 10.
Oh, they're not in your top 10. Okay. Man, so
good choice though still.
I think Dominic Pooney is playing well. I think he's playing really well. I think Malik Mustafa, outside of getting trucked at the goal line by Patrick Mahomes, RIP, I think other than that play, he has been playing well. He has really been.
Did you just put them in here so that you could bring up that play?
No, brother, I don't want to bring up that play. I like how Malik Mustafa has played this year. In fact, on the Gray's Release show that we had on Monday, my most impressive in the game, I had Malik Mustafa in there because I was like, Mustafa's been really impressing me. He's coming down from depth. They're playing him in the box. They'll play him at the line of scrimmage. He's taking on the Talanoa Hufanga role. Like, he is playing that really well and really confidently, in my opinion. You and I have talked about him here on the Rookie Review Show. And then he got bullied by Mahomes at the goal line. And I'm like, God, I can't do it. I can't make him most impressive.
Well, that's what I mean. I love Malik Mustafa like a family member, but like that was still an insane hit. We got to talk about it. That was nuts. He got trucked.
What was more impressive, honestly? Like Mahomes lowering the shoulder at the goal line against Mustafa, or Joe Burrow just like hitting like 21 miles an hour on that 50-yard run and actually scampering in? I don't know. Both of those were unbelievably impressive to me.
I don't know if I trust these mile per hour results sometimes. I'm like
30 miles an hour.
So Derrick Henry and Joe Burrow run the same speed. Like, oh my God. I'm sorry, I'm not buying.
Look, I've often said that Joe Burrow and Derrick Henry have the same exact athleticism, and it's very clear by the miles per hour tracking that we have there. No, but, you know, I actually think the 49ers are a candidate on this list who can rise a good bit. I like Renardo Green when he has been out there. He's played sparingly, but when he has been out there, I've liked it. I think Charvarius Ward was out last week, and Green came in and he played well, got himself an interception. Certainly with Brandon Ayuk now down for the year, Ricky Pearsall has a chance to really make a name for himself in this rookie class, as does Jacob Cowing. We've seen very limited action from both of those guys, but I think they'll have opportunities moving forward. So if we were to do this at the end of the year, projecting their potential playing time moving forward, I think we're going to talk about the Niners in this top 10, but I snuck them in here at number 10.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying there. To me, it is exactly what you said. Like, I just haven't quite seen enough yet. Like, I actually thought Cowing, there were some flashes the other day on Sunday. Like, I thought, like, oh, this guy looks like he can contribute, especially with the injuries they have. I mean, Garendo hasn't looked bad. Like, he's looked like he could be a player. Green and little flashes. Even Mustafa's only really played in like 3 games so far. So it's just been, and we just saw Pearsall in his first game. So I just haven't seen it, other than Puny, I haven't seen enough from everybody yet to feel like that as confident as I do in some of these other classes. It's because of the playing time, the small sample size thing scares me a little bit. But you're absolutely right that by the end of the year, it would be easy to see this class in that conversation, especially because Pearsall and Cowing are probably going to play a good bit the rest of the season. So they are arrow pointing up type of class. I have no issue with you having them here. That's not an egregious one, in my opinion, at all. So you can take some solace in that.
Okay, wonderful. We're off to a great start here. Who do you got at number 9 on the list?
Number 9, I actually have the Chargers at number 9. I don't know how, are they in your list?
They are in my list, and they are actually number 8 for me. So they are barely ahead. So that we see them quite similarly. This was a really tough one, though, where to place the Chargers.
It was a tough one because Alt missed a game or 2 maybe, but he's been really, really good. So did he miss 2?
I think he missed 2, if I remember correctly.
He's been really good. Lab McConkey, I think, has been good, but the production hasn't been there, and I know he didn't play his best on Monday night. Mm-hmm. But I am really excited about their first 2 picks and the trajectory of those 2 picks. Those guys look like for sure starters. McConkey, floor as a number 3 receiver. I think he could easily be a number 2 receiver for a team. And then Joe Alt, I think, looks like a long-term starter at tackle. So to do that in your first 2 picks, I think is huge. The rest of the class, we'll see. I am pretty intrigued by Cam Hart and Tarheeb still in the way that they've played the last couple of weeks for the Chargers. I mean, you can definitely have qualms with the Broncos as an opposing offense 2 weeks ago, but I thought Harton still executed what they want to do, what Jesse Minter wants to do defensively really, really well for 2 guys who haven't played. But they're kind of in the group of the 49ers guys we just talked about. We just haven't seen Hart or Still play enough to feel super confident about them one way or the other at this point. But
yeah,
I'm big fans of Alt and McConkey, so I have this class up pretty high.
That's why I had them at number 8. And just placing them on this list is really difficult because it's like they don't really have the depth. There's not a lot of names here, but Alt has been so good, and I think McConkey has also been really good. To me, that carried them up to the number 8 spot. So I agree with everything that you're saying there with that group. We just need to see a little bit more from the rest of them if they were to climb up this list. Number 9 for me, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 9.
Oh, okay. I have them higher.
So I figure you could have them higher because this was a really tough team for me to place because I obviously love Zach Frazier. Zach Frazier is fantastic. Right. He's been one of the best rookies in the NFL so far this season. We did not really get this, but outside of Zach Frazier, we didn't really get to see Troy Fautanu before he got hurt. Mason McCormick is coming into his own. I think that he is certainly going to be a good player for them, as I really talked about immediately after the draft, how I like that selection for him. So I think that is still solid as well. Beanie Bishop had the 2 interceptions this past week, but he's, as an undrafted free agent, understandably so, his grades are lower. I think just, like his overall performance has been a little bit lower. And then I think that Peyton Wilson, again, is somebody who's like coming along, but it's been a little bit of a slow start for him, as you would, again, expect from a rookie. So for the Steelers, like the 49ers, there's a reason why I had these 2 teams back to back. It's because I sort of feel similarly about them. Pooney and Zach Frazier sort of carry this list for me. And then there are some players who I think could be better as the year goes on. Like, again, I think that we could do this exercise and the Pittsburgh Steelers could be a lot higher at the end of the year. I just think it's been slow for some of these rookies, and I don't have full confidence to say like, oh, okay, they're just going to get better from this point on, or if it's just we're going to continue to go up and down with a lot of these players for them. So I know what I have in Frazier, but I'm not 100% sure what I have in the rest of the group, so that's why I got the Steelers at number 9. Oh, muted.
Oh, I'm muted. That's fair. I think, especially if I'm going to follow the protocol that I laid out for the last team, couple teams that we did, like the fact that you haven't seen much of Fautanu, and McCormick even has only started a handful of games now at this point, does leave you questioning a little bit what the upside's going to be. But I mean, I think to get the contributions they've gotten from their rookie class right out of the gate, and just how good Fautanu looked in camp for them, I think is exciting. But obviously, we're just talking about play this season, and Frazier being one of the best rookies in the entire league, a top 3 offensive rookie in the league for me this season, has definitely carries a lot of that weight. Peyton Wilson has stepped in and contributed from day one, played a pretty big role for this team, done it pretty well. There are, definitely rookie bumps in the road, but he and McCormick, I think, of both being solid and looking like they could be future starters at their positions. Very much arrow pointing up guys to me. McCormick just played a lights out game. He's gotten better every week that he's been out there, really. So that's really encouraging to me to be able to find guys like that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely disappointing that Fautanu's hurt, and how much you take that in consideration. The fact that you haven't seen him certainly hurts. And then the fact that Roman Wilson can't get on the field, even though he's also been hurt and is hurt now for the second time. Still concerning, even when he was healthy, that he couldn't get on the field in this wide receiver room for as long as he could. So it's not without issue, but I do think so far that they're pretty good. But yeah, I mean, this is in that group. The Steelers for me were 6. So this was still in that group of like 6 through 11, really, for me. We'll talk about who I have at 11 and just off the list. 11, 12, honestly, because 49ers would have been at 12 for me. That honestly was all pretty similar tier to me. I had those guys in kind of all a tier together, so that makes sense.
Okay, all right. So now then you would have one other team? Because I had the Steelers at 9.
Yeah. So I have 2 teams. I have Eagles 10, Chargers 9, then I have 2 teams, and then the Steelers. My number 8 team is the Raiders. Do you have the Raiders in yours?
So I don't have the Raiders in mine.
Okay, here's why I have the Raiders in mind. I'll make the case for it.
All right, sell it to me.
It's hilarious that I'm making the case for the Raiders because I've been so critical of this franchise and extremely critical of Tom Telesco. And I'm not saying even that this draft actually will end up looking good long term or that they went through the right strategy here. But Brock Bowers has been one of the best rookies in the NFL and one of the best rookie tight ends in NFL history.
Yeah.
This is a position that almost never starts fast, and he is starting at this level already as a receiver. Really, really impressed with how he's played. He has looked better every week. He competes as a blocker. I don't think he's going to be just a big receiver. I think he can give you everything you want at that position. I've been more and more encouraged each week of tape with him than I was even when we talked about him a few weeks ago. That combined with the fact that, to me, DJ Glaze at right tackle looks like a future starter for them. To get that in the 3rd round at a high-value position when you really are trying to rebuild through the offensive line, that to me seems like a big deal. Now, it's a small sample size. We still need to see Glaze in more games. So far, really encouraged by him and what he offers. Now, if Jackson Powers-Johnson had played better, this would probably be a lock top 5. He's been in there. It's been pretty rough. Maybe he'll adjust. He's playing guard. He was a center. Like I think there's a lot of explanations for it. But if we're just judging on like how they've looked so far this season, it is getting carried by 2 guys playing really well. I think they've been 2 of the better rookies this year. But Bowers, I think, especially like looking as special as he is, that they had to get that pick right, Trevor. This team has drafted as bad as any franchise in NFL history ever has for an extended period of time. And then they just rolled the dice on using a second high pick on a tight end that had some fit questions coming out, even if we thought Bowers was an amazing college player. Mm-hmm. And so I think just being able to make that decision, it was a ballsy decision. And then to have it play out the way that it has, to me, like that is really helpful for the Raiders. Now, would I have started a rebuild to their degree with a tight end? That probably wouldn't have been my pick. That probably wouldn't have been my strategy. However, if we're just saying, are the picks good? The picks seem good right now.
Yeah, I talked about this with Connor Rogers on the NFL Stock Exchange show. Brock Bowers would be my favorite bet to win Rookie of the Year right now. It's like he's like plus 4,000, and that's, you know, obviously like how Jaden is playing, how Caleb has been playing recently. Like those guys are at the top of the list when it comes to
you're just talking about playing the odds
for a reason, right? And it makes sense. But like Bowers being plus 4,000, dude, he's the best tight end in the NFL right now. Like it's just, especially from a production standpoint, I should say. From a production standpoint, I should say he has the most yards of any tight end. He has the highest receiving grade of any tight end. I think he has the highest overall grade of any tight end. And so it's like
but their offense has so many other options in great quarterback play that you wonder how much. Oh wait,
and so he's making up for all this. So I didn't have the Raiders in here. You are higher on DJ Glaze than I am. I think I just candidly need to watch more of him. But I know that Jackson Powers Johnson, huh?
Did you say he's trash? Did I hear you say he's trash?
Yeah, verbatim. Right. Yeah, correct. I'm going to be honest. I didn't love him coming out of Maryland. Like I didn't love him as a prospect. And so, hey, perhaps I just didn't give him enough of the benefit of the doubt of how he might be playing this year. So I got to go back and watch that. But I consider the Raiders for this basically because of Brock Bowers. But it was basically only because of Brock Bowers, because I don't think Jackson Powers Johnson has played particularly well. So they're not in my top 10. But I understand them sort of being there at number 8 for you. I said who my number 8 was. It was the Los Angeles Chargers, which brings me up to number 7, which I have as the Chicago Bears. Where do you have the Chicago Bears?
Not in my top 10.
Okay, so you don't have them in the top 10. All right, so this to me is because Caleb was off to a slow start. Rome Odunze's been a little bit up and down. But Odunze's production, I still think, has been good relative to the rest of the passing offensive weapons that they have on that team, the DJ Moore, the Keenan Allen, all the tight ends, certainly the running backs as well. I think that Odunze has found his place in there well enough, in my opinion, and for how Caleb has played, particularly over the last 2 to 3 weeks, obviously hitting it at quarterback means more. It does. It means more. And so Caleb playing the way that he is carries a lot of weight here with this. And I was really debating where to put them because there's another team, by saying this, I'm making it kind of obvious, that I have higher on this list who their quarterback is carrying big time. Caleb just hasn't played as well as this other quarterback, and Odunze hasn't played as well as some of these other players that I'm going to mention on that rookie class. And so for them, I think I had them lower initially, but I kept bumping them up a little bit because, again, how much Caleb has meant, especially over the last 2 to 3 weeks. If that's the version of Caleb that we get moving forward, maybe it's a little bit of a hopeful projection here with me. So I have the Bears at number 7.
It's just all projection to me. Like, I mean, Caleb played well in the last game, I think. I don't really think most of the season, I don't really think he's been good. I think Caleb's still going to be awesome. I don't have any issues with this club, with you if you're projecting out and saying like, oh, these guys are both going to be 2 of the best players from this class. 100% agree. Like, I definitely think that's where it is. To me, it was just like, okay, have they been this season? Like, I don't think Caleb's been a positive for the team this season so far until recently. Like, I think he's not been able to elevate what's already a pretty, obviously not been an ideal situation. Now they've gotten by because their defense has been awesome, and they've done enough things to get by, but I don't think he's particularly looked good until maybe last week or 2, I would say. And so like it just depends how much you're going to weigh that part of it. And Odunze's been fine. I think he's been solid, but I think that there's a lot left on the field still. He can continue to get better, and I think he will. Like, these are 2 of my top players in this class. I think they're going to absolutely be there if we go to the end of the year or maybe the end of next year and we look back at who the best classes are. I fully believe that the Bears are going to be near the top of that list. I just think like this season so far, I was weighing that heavier. And so that's why I left them off there. And do you want to know who my number 7 team is?
I do. I would love to hear who your number 7 team is.
I don't know if you're going to have them on the list, but well, maybe you would sneak them into the top 5. I have the Colts number 7.
I have the Colts higher than this.
Higher? Okay, all right. Okay. That makes me feel better. I wasn't sure because some of their guys are pretty off the radar or small sample size. Like Latu's been awesome, but Jalen Carley stepping in and being able to play this role for them that he's played as like a coverage linebacker who was a safety in college, like that is a pretty exciting development. Feels like they hit on a player. Like, by the way, the Colts are up there with these other teams in terms of churning out linebackers. It's been very impressive what they've been able to do in terms of homegrown talent. Bordolini's jumped in and filled in for Ryan Kelly and looked pretty good in that capacity. So I feel really good about that pick and his chance to develop there as Kelly probably nears the end here. And then Adonai Mitchell's gotten open a ton. There's just no production because they haven't been able to hit anything in terms of throwing him the football. But I think he's looked great on tape. So they are kind of like a tape team. I don't know if Carley's is really on people's radar or Bordolini is really on people's radar or Mitchell because there's not much production this season. But if you sit and actually watch the Colts all 22 and watch their rookies, you're pretty consistently impressed with some of the guys that they put on the field. So that's why they got to 7 for me. I had them just behind the Steelers, but I could have gone either way with that one.
I have them at 5 on the list for exactly what you said, if not appreciating that even more. A.D. Mitchell is open, man, and he was open basically for the very beginning of the season, first couple of games. Like, he is getting open. They just cannot get him the football. It feels like it's either an Alec Pierce deep bomb or nothing from this passing attack, and A.D. Mitchell's overall production is suffering because of it, but he is playing well. You mentioned Latu, obviously, is playing really well. Jalen Carley is great. I think that's a great shout out. Obviously, he is on my list as a reason why I think this rookie class is good. And then I've been so impressed with Tanner Bordolini being able to come in and play for an offensive line that is really good, and it really didn't miss too much of a beat because of how well he was able to play, and that just doesn't often happen with these rookies. So I think it's a lot of the culmination of just this entire team, both sides of the ball, really nailing those picks. These guys are playing really good football, and so I ended up having them at number 5 on the list. Before we get to my number 16, because who'd you say you said your number 16? I think you had the Steelers number 6, right?
Yeah, the Steelers number 6. Yeah.
Okay, so you have the Steelers at number 6. So I'm gonna get to my number 16. But before we get to that, best part about football season, guys, it is checking out the post-game stats, right? Which wide receivers caught the 2 touchdowns, which quarterbacks threw for more or less than 300 yards. If you think you know what's gonna happen before game day, and before that ball gets kicked off, you got to play Pick 6 by DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Select between 2 to 6 players. Choose if they'll have more or less than a single stab. That's it. It's very simple. For first-time Pick 6 players, you can check this out. New customers, they put $5 on the line on whatever your first Pick 6 set is, and you get $50 in credits for free. We got the 49ers and the Cowboys. That's a big-time matchup coming up. Another primetime game, the New York Giants versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even if it's not going to look like it's going to be an offensive explosion, as you can see on the screen there's plenty of more or less stats for plenty of different situations. And if you think one way or the other, like, okay, that's too low, it's going to be more than that, or all right, well, that's way too high, it's going to be less than that, put $5 on the line, you get those $50 for free. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use the promo code PFF. For new customers to get $5 on your first pick, or to bet just $5 on your first Pick 6 set, and then you get those 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All right. My number 16, I think you have to have them in the top 5. If you don't,
so my 5 are the only ones that are left. So there's going to be some difference here, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I guess there is going to be a massive difference here. Wait, am I going to have somebody in my top 5 that you don't even have on the board?
I mean, maybe.
Is that how math works?
Go. Give me your 6.
All right, my number 6 team is the Green Bay Packers.
Okay, I have the Packers higher than this.
Okay, all right. So Evan Williams, their safety, playing phenomenal. He is, I think, the highest graded safety, let alone the highest graded defensive rookie in the NFL right now for how well he is playing. The confidence, the recognition, the anticipation, how well he is playing on the back end of that Jeff Hafley defense with Xavier McKinney. I mean, they are just playing off each other very, very well, especially when he is playing from one of those deep safety spots, whether it's a two safety or a single safety set. So I think he is playing very well. I think Edgerrin Cooper hasn't played a ton, but when they put him out there, along with Eric Wilson, along with Quay Walker, they're allowing Edgerrin Cooper to just utilize his athleticism as a run and chase player, but also sometimes as a coverage dropper too. You're already seeing signs of really good return on investment from that, so I love to see that from Edgerrin Cooper. You have Jonathan Bullard as well, who gets into that safety mix, but also he's that slot defender type of a player who has flashed already this season, been a little bit up and down, but I think he is great, especially when you give the context of the nature of the position, how it's a little bit up and down and what they are asking him to do. He has played very solid. So I think specifically on the defensive side of the football, they've absolutely nailed it with these three guys. Jordan Morgan, been a little bit up and down within that offensive line, but the offensive line's playing better with some veterans that they have in that group there anyway. So I think just overall, the very top of the Packers draft, especially on the defensive side of the ball, hard to argue with their success. So I had them right outside the top 5 at number 6 here.
I had them number 2, actually.
Ooh.
And the reason I think it looks like they got 3 starters to me, like at this point, obviously. We'll see. Is the only reason it could be pause on this is just Cooper's role hasn't really like grown into like a full-time linebacker yet. Like, but he's been so impressive in what he's done. And what I've been impressed with the most is just his IQ and his intensity. Like, he has found the football consistently. The pass game stuff that he's doing, like in coverage, like the versatility of his usage in coverage is just highly impressive. So from a process standpoint, he seems like the modern day linebacker and what you want at that position. Now you're kind of working backwards and seeing if he can grow into like a full-time early downs role as well, because they haven't used him much in that capacity so far. But that will inform the decision more. So if you want to push back because that hasn't happened yet, that is probably fair. I think Evan Williams looks like a future star, and he's only started about half the game so far too, or been a heavy snaps guy, let's say, because starting is weird in today's NFL. But Javon Bullard has been starting since day one, and has also been able to step into the slot role and play pretty well, which I think is pretty rare at this position. So it looks like they got 3 guys who can really contribute on their defense. They really needed that because they missed on so many picks on that defense. They did so many disappointing guys come through. So right now it looks like a great draft. You could probably talk me into like they will be passed up by other teams as it goes, because 2 safeties and a linebacker, if we're talking value eventually, like, are the Bears going to get over them? Or some of the other teams I have lower going to get over them just based on the strength of like they've got a star in their class and the Packers don't have like a star in their group. That's definitely a reasonable argument in my opinion. Also, Jordan Morgan, what becomes of him? We haven't really seen enough yet for me to feel strong one way or the other. But if they can get their first round pick to be like a solid starter, which they have with most offensive linemen, that is probably the upside move for this class, looking better than it looks currently. So through this amount of games, they're number 2 for me. If you ask me what I'm guessing at the end of the season where it'll be, my guess is they get bypassed by some other teams with players maybe that are a little more productive, a little more important roles. But just from what we've seen so far, this class has been pretty lights out.
Yeah, I do agree, obviously, with the strength of the group. I think I know who I'm going to have in my top 5 who you're not going to have on your list at all.
Should I go with my 5 here?
Yeah, who's your number 5 here? Who do you have? Because the Colts were 5 for me, just to recap. We already talked about the Colts because you mentioned the Colts at 7, I think is where you had the Colts.
Yes.
Yep. And then I had them at number 5.
Yeah, so quick recap for me, and then maybe you can jump in once I say my number 5 and give your recap just so people are caught up. But I've got Eagles 10, Chargers 9, Raiders 8, Colts 7, Steelers 6, and then for me, number 5 is the LA Rams. They in your top?
They are. They're at number 4 for me. Who do I have in my 5 that you don't?
Yeah, so the Rams, to me, versus the defensive rookie of the year right now, I think he's been absolutely unbelievable. If he could tackle, we'd be talking about him on every show, probably like foot to open, because he's just been so unblockable, so disruptive, run and pass. Just looks like a difference-making player. We just have to get him to calm down enough to get to tackle. You and I have joked about this almost every week, but he is like
I texted you yesterday.
Tackles.
I texted you yesterday. I said if he has longer arms, he's Reggie White. Like it's just that's the level of play that we're getting out of Jared Verse right now.
He's like second in the league in missed tackles, and he's a defensive lineman. Like, I mean, he plays on the line. Like, that just never happened. Like, everybody else in the top, like 12 or whatever, is like all safeties, linebackers, maybe a corner in there. And in the top of like 32 in missed tackles, there's only like 3 defensive linemen. And so it's just, he is really, really struggling in that capacity. If he could finish, everybody would kind of be on board, and when he would be already be more of a, wow, this guy's blowing up as a rookie. But as of now, he is a little more of a tape study type player. Like, the tape watchers know Jared Verse is killing people, but a lot of the people who just skim the box scores, I think the average fan or whatever may not be aware of how disruptive he's been. I think Braden Fisk has been okay. Like, there's definitely all the fit issues that I thought there might be just in terms of being an every down player are there. He is still, his athleticism is translated though. Like, he still can be disruptive. Really reminds me, not to just he really reminds me of Brian Bresee in a lot of ways. Like, just there's some passing gets down stuff there. There's some disruption. Like, they can just slip a gap and get in the backfield and make a splash play, and everybody's like buzzing about him. But then if you watch snap to snap, they're kind of getting knocked off the ball. So we'll see where it goes with Fisk. Bo Limmer stepping in and being like a pretty solid center for them has been huge.
Yep.
With all the injuries they've had. And then Jordan Whittington, I've raved about him on the show. He is so impressive to me, just as a do everything type of player that looks like kind of floor number 3 type of receiver for them in the future. Yeah, I just think it's been a really good class. And when the Rams have picks, they're pretty good at this thing.
I agree with you so much about everything. Jared Verse is fantastic. I think Braden Fisk has played well. I'm a little bit higher on him than you just because I didn't love Bresee, but I like Braden Fisk. So I think that I'm buying into his potential a little bit more. Maybe I'm seeing him with through rose-colored glasses, but I think he's going to continue to play even better. We've already got one game where he was an elite pass rusher. I know it hasn't been much outside of that, but I think that's sort of the potential that he has. We've talked about Jordan Whittington on the show. Bo Limmer stepping in has been great. Blake Corum really hasn't had to do much because Kyren Williams is so unbelievably consistent. But like, I think if they were to ever need Blake Corum to step up in Kyren Williams' absence, I don't have any reservations about him being able to do that. So I think that they absolutely nailed it. I agree with you. When they don't decide to trade away all their draft picks, they are pretty good at this thing. So I had them at number 4 because of that. Who do you have at number 4 then? Who's number 4?
So wait, should you say who you have at 5, or did you say 5 already?
No. So just to recap for the people at home, I had the Niners at 10. I had the Steelers at 9. I had the Chargers at 8, the Bears at 7, the Packers at 6. I had the Colts at 5.
Oh, that's right.
And then I had the Los Angeles Rams at number 4. So now who do you have at number 4?
Oh, man. This is crazy. I have the Commanders at 4. You've got to have the Commanders in there. Are they 1 for you?
I have the Commanders at 2.
At 2. Okay, all right. So Commanders are in there. I can't imagine you wouldn't have either of the last 2 teams I haven't said in, but Commanders, I have, Mike Sainristil still is somebody we probably haven't talked about enough on the show. He's really come into his own the last couple weeks, but he started off in the slot. Everything's a mess. The communication's a disaster. They play Tampa Bay week 1. It's like, seriously, is this the worst team in the NFL? Like, this might be the worst defense in the NFL. And I'm like, where do they even go for answers? Forbes looks like a boss. Like, they just don't have anything. And then Sainristil still starts playing outside corner for the Commanders. And it's like, oh, like, everybody thought he was a nickel, like, and he probably is long term, but the fact that he's been able to give them stability there, he's been able to give them playmaking, he kills stuff in the flats, he can still play in the slot when you need to. He looks like such a nice addition for them that we probably haven't gotten to enough just because he's started to shine more recently. Huge for them just to have some stability and a leader and somebody who has an edge to their defense. But Daniels, obviously, we've talked about a ton on this show, Offensive Rookie of the Year, front runner right now. Just really excited to see him play every single week because of all the stuff he's capable of showing. Brandon Coleman's in sort of like this timeshare type of deal at tackle that's been weird, and I think he's been okay, and certainly has potential to be better. This scheme has really helped protect him. Luke McCaffrey, I think, has been pretty solid for them as well. I think Johnny Newton is showing some things, so we'll get a chance to do more with John Allen out. Newton, who I loved pre-draft, has definitely not looked fully recovered from this foot issue. And so you wonder if that's affecting him, but they've been able to get good stuff from Jean Baptiste as well in the run game. So a lot of contributors from the class, certainly a big class. So that does help boost them a little bit. But I think just they've had like really good play, and then they might have 2 like studs on offense and defense in Daniels and Sainristil still. So I'm a big fan of what the Commanders did, and I think it looks pretty good. So
no, I agree with you, man. I think that you you encapsulated it pretty well. Daniels is a stud at the very top. Mike Sainristil is an absolute stud in the secondary. Sainristil was one of those guys where I said it like this pre-draft. His measurables, he's probably just mainly going to be a slot. You're not going to want him on the outside against some really good outside, taller receivers, like the true wide receiver ones. I don't think you'll want him out there. But his feistiness, his competitiveness, his play style, his talent, it's evidenced by the fact that you would even be willing to play him out there. And so when we were going through the draft process, I remember saying, I don't really hold smaller slot corners in this high of a regard, but I would draft Mike Sainristil top 40. Like, he's a top 40 player in this class for me. And I remember saying that. I'm glad that he goes to a defensive coordinator, or a defensive mind, I should say, like Dan Quinn, who's able to utilize him in all of the ways that he could be utilized. I think Luke McCaffrey's going to come along. Brandon Coleman, I think, is the future starting offensive tackle of this team, even though he is, like you said, in a little bit of a timeshare. I think Ben Sennett's going to come along as well. Jean Baptiste, a good shout out too. So there's a group that stud to the top, very, very deep moving forward. And I also realized that I don't think I can do math correctly, because you just named your 4. You've already said the Packers is one of your team. I just told you the Commanders are my 2. So both of us just have number 3 and number 2 available, or number 3 and number 1 available.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's going to be the same teams in the same order. We will see in a second. Before we get to that,
this is good. We led the audience along this whole time, because I bet they were just they trusted us, took our word for it, and really we just can't do freaking math. That's really the whole thing.
That is, I think, the that's the theme of you and I doing a podcast going all the way back to the days of Locked On NFL Draft. I feel like that was us. This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Cherry Bunny, the performance drink that is fueling the healthy revolution. They've got natural products and natural ingredients with no added sugar involved. The tart cherries, which is their main ingredient, it's the highest antioxidant fruit or vegetable in the world, which comes with a ton of natural benefits. Anti-inflammatory, it reduces soreness, it increases recovery, it helps with immunity, it helps you with sleep, all sorts of stuff. So no matter what kind of active lifestyle that you live, whatever you're looking for, whether it is help with that recovery, help with sleep, maybe they've got protein drinks as well, which you can look into. They've got something for you. It's used by nearly 500 collegiate and professional sports teams. They are legit. Every single NFL team, every team that was playing overseas in Europe or Brazil this NFL season has had Cherry Bundy with them to help them recover and let them play their best. So whether you are training for a marathon or you just like to walk around the neighborhood a couple of times a week, whatever you are looking for, it's going to help you recover and feel your best when you are looking to be active. Products are available at Amazon and cherrybunny.com, retailers nationwide, including Publix and Kroger, so you can check those locations. But if you don't see them there, you can always get some at cherrybunny.com. Number 3 for me, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 3.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, all right. Whew, this is about to get real spicy if we didn't. But look, it's just another Jason Light masterclass, it feels like, on both sides of the ball. Tyke Smith's an absolute stud. We talked about Mike Sainristil being a stud corner. Tyke Smith is a stud as well. Graham Barton, he's been a little bit up and down, but I mean, there's been some such great moments from Barton already as a starting center, as a rookie. Jalen McMillan now with Chris Godwin out for what looks like out for the season with a dislocated a dislocated ankle. And then you have Mike Evans going down with what looked like a painful hamstring injury. I don't know how much time he is going to miss. It's going to be up to Sterling Shepard, but also Jalen McMillan to step up, and you're going to see him get a ton of targets moving forward. He had a lot of volume while he was at Washington, so I don't think an increase in workload is going to be intimidating for him. I think you're going to see great things from McMillan moving forward. Bucky Irving's been fantastic for this backfield as well. And then you can throw in like Elijah Klein. We haven't really seen him this year, but we saw him in the preseason. A lot of people love him. I love sort of the flashes that we've seen there. So that's just a little bit of sugar on top, a little bit of an added bonus. But those 4 guys that I mentioned there, especially with McMillan's increased role moving forward, I think we're going to look back on this class and say, man, they got 4 stud players right there. Maybe starters, depending on how the lineup ends up playing out, but they're guys that you're not afraid to go out there and start and play a lot, give them a lot of volume. They've already shown that here 7 weeks in through the season. So I got the Buccaneers at number 3.
There's just so much value to a general manager who doesn't miss, like badly on players. Even when you talk about like some of the guys who haven't worked out as well, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka or Logan Hall, where they were drafting at the end of the first round, even beginning of the second for Logan Hall. And it was like, okay, these aren't deep drafts, first of all, neither of them. And it's like, oh, these guys may not, they've been starting okay, solid caliber players, even if they haven't turned into what you would hope from, like, I think Logan Hall was the first pick of the second round, like picks in that range of the draft. You would hope, but in those classes, like, it's like, well, you can still see the process. Like, there's aren't like, oh, this guy just can't play, like he just can't be on the field. Like, that just doesn't happen
No.
with his classes. And so that's really the story of this class, right? Like, Graham Barton has been good, like, for a guy who's switching positions, and play. And by the way, he's looked better every week. I mean, he had some rough moments against Grady Jarrett. Outside of that little space in the fourth quarter of that game, like, he has looked better every single week. And this offense played well, I thought, in the loss to the Ravens as well. So against pretty good competition there. So he has been really good, I think, and the upside for him is really tantalizing as well. Bucky Irving has been awesome. I mean, definitely in the conversation when you talk about who the best rookie running back has been. He's been right there. Looks like a 3-down guy, pass protects, catches the football. Like, how do you get a guy like that on day 3? Like, he's a huge pick. Tyke Smith playing the role that he's playing this season, starting from day one as the nickel in this defense, being one of the best defensive players on this team. Being this good from right out of the gate too, like, is really, really impressive. And then, obviously a lot of this is going to come to Chris Braswell. Does he hit or does he not as a second round pick? It wasn't a deep edge class. The Bucks really needed a player at the position. Maybe they reached to address the position. I mean, you could certainly debate and have that conversation. I think he's been okay. I mean, he didn't play well against the Ravens, but I think he's been okay other than that this season. He actually had some 1v1 wins against the Saints. That really hasn't happened much for him as a rookie. That's probably the area you want to see develop most. But he seems fine in terms of run defense, in terms of coverage stuff. Like, there's been some fine stuff from him in that regard. I think it's just like he hasn't really been there haven't been a ton of flashes as a 1v1 rusher. So we'll see how that develops. McMillan, I think, has actually really struggled, but he still won the job in camp. And so you got to think they will see something more from him. And we'll see, obviously, as you mentioned, he's going to get a chance to play a lot moving forward. And so it is going to be a good test to see just how good he can be. I do have pretty big questions about the hands and the play strength. I think have been questions definitely so far this season. But some of it seems like the game moving too fast for him as a rookie. But overall, like, even if he can become a number 3 receiver, what a hit in the 3rd round. And to have all the other guys they got out of this class that look as good as they've gotten. Klein was so exciting for them in camp. They haven't needed to make a move because everybody in the O-line has been really good this season. But if they had to, they would feel pretty good about putting Klein into that lineup if they need to. So I think it's just a home run class, and they got a ton of talent out of it, which is really big to do when you don't have multiple firsts or multiple seconds to be able to get this much talent out of a class. It just speaks, again, if you just don't miss, like, if you just get solid players, you can talk about upside and things like that. But if you just get helpful players with all your picks, it's really hard to be bad.
If Chris Braswell is your worst player, it's a pretty damn good class. I think that's kind of the way that you could encapsulate it here for what the Bucks were able to do. So, like, I agree with you. I think this is a really good unit. It's guys that really gel with the team, and that's the thing. Jason Light understands this team so well. He understands the makeup of the coaches, what they're trying to do, and that's why you don't see these guys flop. Right? Because, like, there's just such great continuity between the front office, the talent acquisition guys, and the coaching staff as well. Like, they understand things really, really well to where, like, okay, yeah, Logan Hall and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, they didn't become world beaters for you, but there's absolutely places on this team for them. They are functional. They are good rotational players. So I think that it's just, it again goes back to what a healthy organization the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been for better part of the last, at least 6 years, certainly, right. With this team. It's been a really fun one to watch. I had the Washington Commanders at number 2. You had the Green Bay Packers at number 2. And the number 1 team, either we're going to agree or one of us is going to have the number 1 team and the other one's not even going to have them on their list.
We're going to agree.
But I have the New York Giants here at number 1.
Yeah, everybody wants to fire their GM. What about this class, dude? Like, I mean, I'm always staying on the table. I don't know how I ended up as this guy, but I'm always staying on the table. Giants' process hasn't been bad. Like, they don't have a quarterback. Not everything's worked out, but I feel like they're looking at things the right way in terms of, a lot of the moves that they've made, like, that get, like, they publicly criticized for. I understand where they're coming from. And yeah, this class just seems like lights out, man. They got Malik Neighbors. I mean, obviously he looks like the best of the wide receivers in this class so far, which is huge. That was not an easy decision, I think, at that point. I mean, you had Odunze on the board. I would have taken Neighbors, but I think there were some people that would have taken Odunze. It wasn't like that was like the obvious pick. You know what I mean? Like, makes sense. So they correctly seem like they've analyzed that, and we'll see. I think Odunze is still going to be awesome, but neighbors just watching with him, like, yeah, this guy absolutely should be special. So I think that's huge. Drew Phillips is one of the best defensive players in this class already, playing nickel. Again, that spot and how important it is, just absolutely massive. Tyler Nubin's been a solid starter for them at safety so far this season. Elijah Chapman, nickel rusher, like, can be that guy that comes in and smaller interior guy who gives you that juice on passing downs next to Lawrence. He's also just crazy in the way that he plays, which is what you want next to Lawrence, just somebody who's want to throw themselves into blockers to keep opening things up for Lawrence. So I love that. Tyron Tracy, I said to you last week on the show, I'm like, this guy looks awesome. And I continue to feel that way, that they got an absolute steal in him. So it looks like a potential franchise cornerstone type of class. That's how good it is.
They have a player who's going to be a starter at wide receiver and wide receiver one for them. Player who's going to be starting CB and CB1 for them in the slot. RB1 for them in Tyler Nubin. Starting safety in Tyler Nubin, and then RB1 in Tyrone Tracy. And that's not even considering like what Theo Johnson could develop could develop into for them. Words are hard. And then Elijah Chapman, like you said, who is a great interior defensive line piece for this group. And so anytime that you can get 4 starters for your team, like solidified starters in those first 4 guys that I mentioned, and then have the opportunity to say, yeah, and we got these other rotational guys, and we'll see what happens with them over the next couple of years. I mean, it's going to be a stud class. That's 6 players that I just listed. And the Giants, for as much as they're obviously struggling, it's not a team that's like totally devoid of talent. Like, it's not like, oh, okay, of course they're starters for this team because the rest of the team is cheeks. Like, it's just really good players playing well. So I think hats off to Joe Schoen and the players that he was able to get there. I think that, I have back and forth with Giant fans all the time where I say it doesn't look like it's their season, right? It looks like the Giants could be picking in the top 5 when the year is all said and done. If they're picking in the top 5, do they sort of clean house? Because that'll be year 3 of this organization, and they will be sitting here at the bottom of their division and picking in the top 5. Or how much does the quarterback weigh? Does John Mara and the decision makers for the New York Giants, do they genuinely look at it and like, yeah, okay, we were kind of in a bad spot with Daniel Jones, kind of had to re-sign him. It hasn't worked out. He's been bad. We're going to give you guys at least one more year to go get the quarterback that you want and see what the New York Giants look like in 2025. Maybe that is the case because I like Brian Daboll. And with this class, I've liked more of what Joe Schoen has done at least. And you mentioned the process has been sound. So I think this draft class might save this regime. It looks like it really might save this regime and give them another chance in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't done everything right, but like they tried to take the money and address the offensive line. And for a while they were better. It just, I mean, right. You lose your franchise left tackle 2 years in a row and he barely plays. And you already had a quarterback who, you can't throw the ball down the field with this guy, like a quarterback. Like, so it is really limiting. This class is the hope of something new and better. It would be a godsend for them if they picked high. Obviously, I know this quarterback class isn't rumored to be anything great, but just from a process standpoint, like if they could get a quarterback, that obviously change a lot, I think, with the Giants. I think if they could get a quarterback, you would see them compete for one of those last playoff spots in next season. But if they change the regime, I don't know. Especially with Daboll, I think he is a really good offensive mind. Not everything he's done is perfect. I totally get that. But the way he's been able to use neighbors and get almost out of some of these guys, I think has been exciting. They need an upgrade at the game's most important position.
All right, give me your 10-1. Who'd you have? Let's do a little recap here for the people.
Yeah, 10-1. I had Eagles at 10, Chargers at 9, Raiders at 8, Colts at 7, Steelers at 6, Rams at 5, Commanders at 4, Bucks at 3, Packers at 2, Giants at 1.
Okay, and I had the 49ers at 10, the Steelers at 9, the Chargers at 8, the Bears at 7, the Packers at 6, Colts at 5, Rams at 4, Bucks at 3, Commanders at 2, and the Giants were at number 1 for me as well. I mentioned the Eagles as a team that I considered right outside of the top 10. The Raiders, I didn't really heavily consider because, again, I guess I have not watched enough of Glaze in this one, and he didn't really pop out from our data. I thought it was really top-heavy with Brock Bowers. The only other team that I really thought of here, and I'm curious if you had any, was the Bills. I thought about the Bills a little bit here. You have Keon Coleman, you have Ray Davis. Dwayne Carter's been on the field quite a bit, but I don't think he's played particularly well. Cole Bishop's getting in the lineup, and I think that Cole Bishop is going to fit in with this defense well. Javon Solomon has graded well as a edge rusher for them. He just hasn't played well at all. It's not like there's a large sample size to justify really high PFF grades. He's just been situationally pretty good for them. So I considered the Bills, but I didn't have them in the top 10. Is there anybody else that you really considered maybe getting into that top 10?
Yeah, Bills I had as a consideration. Not really strong consideration, but they were just kind of like, oh,
Right.
they'd be in the next group for sure. Ray Davis, Keon Coleman, both playing solid ball in their respective roles, I think. Bears, for the reasons we discussed before, upside on that group seems really, really high. So wanted to have them pretty close, at least. Cardinals are getting contributions. Max Melton has flashed a little bit to me. You know, people have all kinds of opinions on Marvin Harrison Jr. start. We'll talk about him, I'm sure, at some point here down the road. You know, they've gotten some contributions from their class, but not enough just yet. We'll see where they're at the end of the year. And then I think the 49ers, who you talked about, I mentioned I had them there. The other team I had actually that I would have had 11 is one we haven't mentioned at all, and that would be the Tennessee Titans. Because I think J.C. Latham has looked like the second best tackle in the class, and that's where they took him as. Even if I still think he was overdrafted, they wanted a tackle. I don't know if they, could have. I feel like he may not end up as this number 2 guy. We'll see if Fautanu comes back, and Mims has looked a little bit better recently. We'll see, but I think so far he's been the second best guy. I don't think he's been amazing, but I think he's looked like the second best guy so far. So he seems like a starter there for them at left tackle, and then T'Vondre Sweat was a pick that a lot of us doubted, and we'll see how it works out. But there's no real pass rush impact from him unless he's playing Coleman Shelton. But other than that, I think he's like pretty solid run defender stuff. Looks pretty good for the most part. So there's not like a big contributor. I really want to get into the tape on Jarvis Brownlee. I know you guys have some good numbers on him so far, some good grades on him. So I want to get the tape on him. I haven't seen him much at all yet. So it seems like there's some promise for there to be a couple good pieces in this class. Part of the story with Sweat will be obviously how he handles a couple off seasons in the NFL as a professional with money and decisions he makes and stuff based on where he was in college. But early returns seem solid, I think, for this group. So I would have them at 11, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So the Titans, I sort of talked about them a little bit in my head, but I ultimately, there were other teams I just felt more confident on moving forward. But
you're probably right that the 49ers should be over them. I probably should move them to 12.
Yeah, you were wrong, as I've often said here on this show.
I've never been wrong on a prospect, obviously.
Of course. No. We've never been wrong. That's why people listen to the show, because we've never been wrong on a prospect. I appreciate everybody watching and listening to the show. Let us know what you thought of our takes here for this rookie class. If we're way too low on your class, if we're way too high, we're probably not going to get people who tell us that we're way too high on their rookie class. But hey, maybe. We would love to hear from you guys. We know you got takes on the rookies. They're the future of your franchise. We would love to hear what you think in the comment section here on the show. It's the best way to get into the show. Follow all of Jon's great work at the Audibles and Analytics Substack, as well as the Audible and Analytics podcast. He also does a Read Optional podcast with Ollie Conley. If you can't get enough of their great analysis, which you shouldn't, because there's a lot of it, but it's all fantastic. We will be here same time next week for another rookie review for Jon Ledyard. I'm Trevor Sikkema. We'll see you guys then.